While businesses and schools may close during heavy snowstorms and intense ice, it is still essential that a city like Edmond is operational. There are roads that have to be cleared, emergencies that require a quick response, and stranded motorists that need rescue. In their homes, people depend on the city for water and electricity, so the city of Edmond cannot shut down. In fact, when the weather can be at its most brutal, there are many within the city of Edmond who are out in it, helping residents stay safe. One department that you'll likely see working in this weather is the Public Works Department. They deal with a weather storm before it hits, during the storm, and even afterwards.
I have been very pleased with the response of Edmonds Public Works to the wintertime weather events, both in the preparation before the events actually take place and then during the events themselves.
It is the Public Works Department that clears the roadways before and during snow and icy weather. As this weather approaches, special equipped dump trucks spread salt and sand over Edmond's major roadways, bridges, and overpasses. Even if a storm is moving in overnight, crews are working irregular hours treating the streets.
Actually, the nighttime hours are the best for us to work for snow removal because the traffic obviously is lighter at that time. So we'd prefer it then, but we never know when it's going to hit. If it hits during the daytime, then we're going to go out and do as much removal as we can. We'll just work around the traffic as best we can.
Certain roadways in Edmond receive more attention by the Public Works Department than others. These are called snow routes, and they are the major roads in Edmond that have higher traffic use. With most of their time and resources focused on the major roadways, streets located in residential neighborhoods are not cleared.
There are several reasons for that, one of which is we have large equipment and maneuvering it into the residential streets is very difficult. You have vehicles that are parked along the streets in those residential areas that would make it very difficult for our machinery to work around.
The Public Works Department is affected by ice and snow in other ways too. Because of the colder temperatures, it's very common for water main breaks and leaks to occur. The Waterline Maintenance Group is called upon to repair them. Also, the freeze and thaw cycle of ice on the roadways can cause problems. Public Works crews have to repair those too.
It's not just the slick roads. There are a lot of things that we have to deal with during the wintertime weather.
The icy weather can be difficult for solid waste collection as well. Maneuvering through the residential streets can be challenging and cause the collection to move slower, which is why extra steps have to be taken.
On the residential, we have 7 front-line trucks or routes, and we have 3 backup trucks. So when the weather gets bad, we try to man those backup units and go out and assist the 7 routes to try to make up for the slower collection times.
Because the collection routes adjust during this weather, it's necessary for residents to place their trash poly carts at the curb by 7 a.m.
That's a good habit to get into year-round, is to have your carts out by 7 a.m. and recycling bins for collection. That would help us tremendously.
Another department within the city that is affected by the cold, freezing weather is Edmond Electric. It's their quick response time and their well-trained crews that help the department maintain a reliability rating of 99.99%. Edmond Electric has 2 different cycles it uses as preventative maintenance. One is a 10-year cycle where improvements are made and new facilities are installed to 1/10 of the distribution system each year. Improvements include inspecting and replacing equipment like old poles. This could also include converting overhead lines into underground lines in some of the older residential areas. Another way Edmond Electric prevents outages is the Vegetation Management Program, a 3-year cycle that keeps tree branches away from the distribution lines. Even with these measures in place, there are still some instances where problems occur from snow and ice. Freezing rain can build on the electrical lines, which creates pressure on the lines. Also, ice can weigh down tree limbs, eventually causing them to break off and fall into the lines. Falling snow does not accumulate to the point where it creates the same problem as ice. However, snow can create other problems of its own.
As it builds on the roads and everything, there is potential for cars to slide around, and if they're not taking their precautions, driving a little slower, something like that, going a little too fast maybe, then they will slide off the road. And we've had them where they hit our poles and break the poles.
That's when Edmond Electric's highly trained linemen are brought in to repair the problem and restore power. Whether it's in the afternoon or in the early morning hours, Edmond Electric has linemen on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. During icy and snowy weather, working in these types of conditions is not an easy task. Dean Sherrick has been with Edmond Electric for over 34 years. For 7 of those years, he was a lineman and knows firsthand the conditions they face during the winter months.
Back then, I used to wear a beard during the wintertime, of course, to help keep my face warm. I had icicles forming in my beard. The rubber gloves that we wear, whenever they've been out in the cold for a while, first time you slip your hands into them, they're extremely cold. Then of course you've got everything going on around you, weather-wise. Of course you're going to be cold, and sometimes the buckets, they can get snow in them, and you're standing in maybe 6 inches of snow to begin with, so you're standing in snow.
Another department in the city who can be seen on the streets during icy weather is Edmonds Police Department. Besides handling the normal everyday calls, the police department also responds to problems created by bad weather. These include road accidents and abandoned motorists on the roadways.
Our main concern at that point is to go out, and when we get these calls, is to check the welfare of those occupants inside the vehicles, make sure that they aren't subject to the elements, that they got a full tank of gas in their car, so they can stay in their car and keep the vehicle running and the engine going and the heater on until we can get their vehicle removed.
To prepare for this type of weather, police officers bundle up with extra clothing and wear footgear that helps them with traction on the snow and ice. Also, all of the four-wheel drive vehicles in the department are brought in for use during this time. Officers who normally work their shift alone may be paired with another officer on those days. Like many other City of Edmond employees, the police officers are sometimes stationed in areas for long periods of time. If needed, the police department is equipped to bring basic supplies to the officers.
We've got resources available to get officers meals if they're not able to get out through our Oasis unit, that they can, we'll activate that unit, that they can come out and make sure that the officers are getting taken care of, because they still have those same needs that they do on a regular shift, just like everyone else in the city. So we want to make sure that the officers are out there to where they can work and continue to function, especially on these long shifts where they may not go home for quite a while.
Although these deliveries can be helpful for officers, the best help comes from you. The police department would really appreciate it if people would pay attention to the weather forecasts and listen to the travel advisories.
You still have a lot of people thinking that they can get out in their cars and it's not going to apply to them and they're not going to get stuck. And then the next thing you know, that they're out there getting stuck on roadways that were deemed closed and declared impassable, and now we're having to tie up additional resources to rescue those people, when in reality we need to be having those people, those officers and resources reserved to respond to true emergencies. So the best thing we need for people to do is, when we give the advisories to stay home, is to heed that advice and to stay home.
This also includes keeping all-terrain vehicles like four-wheelers out of the residential streets. Though it can be lots of fun, pulling sleds and traveling up and down the streets can be dangerous.
And we understand that there's a time and a place for that, but if you can get out and do something like that, in a parking lot or on your own property, but not in the roadways, and because we do actually have accidents resulting from those types of playful things too.
Working in the bitter cold can be tough and exhausting, but Edmonds officers are ready and willing to make sure that citizens remain safe. This sometimes means working long hours without breaks, or working on a day they would normally have off.
They just do it because it needs to be done. We have a lot of officers who are always calling in, asking what the status is. Hey, do we need to come in? Are we calling people in? Do you need some additional help? And we had that happen, obviously, during this situation as well. And so yeah, they do an excellent job out there. Enough can't be said about the job that they do.
Police aren't the only ones responding to emergency calls. The Edmond Fire Department is also working in inclement weather. The firefighters prepare for all kinds of calls during the year. Sometimes making it to an emergency can be a problem. Not only is driving in icy weather difficult for residents in normal vehicles, it can also be demanding for fire truck drivers too. Working in heavy snow and freezing ice isn't easy, but there is a dedicated group of firefighters in Edmond who are ready to help whenever called upon. The City of Edmond has a group of employees who try to keep the roads cleared, who strive to keep the power on for your family, who assist if you're stranded on the roadside, and who help you get the medical service you need in an emergency. It's a duty they take on every day, whether in times of fair weather or times of ice and blistering cold.
It really can be miserable when you have to spend long periods of time out in the cold weather, but it's one of those things when it's all said and done. There's a camaraderie of the people who work together. You know, they pat each other on the back, and then of course we get appreciation from the people we've helped, so it all makes it worthwhile.